pursuing and delivering new housing opportunities for residents all throughout Western New York. He's also the vice chair of the Erie Canalway Heritage Fund and a University of Buffalo graduate. Would you please join me in welcoming Brad Patrick?
Good afternoon. First, I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here today. I also want to thank the county executive and the leadership at the county for providing this opportunity and forum. For a guy in my shoes, this is a pretty exciting moment in the business of affordable housing. A few takeaways. I think that we're at an interesting juncture with affordable housing in that, unfortunately, the need in many ways has never been stronger. But we're also in a place where I think the recognition of that need and the resources and the funding to try to address that need has potentially never been stronger. So we're at a crossroads. I think we can really make some headway here. The other thing is I got to take Jason Knight. I don't know, there he is. I just got to bring him everywhere I go because I think that data analysis is sort of disarming in a sense for a lot of the issues that we talk about relative to the stigma that sometimes unfortunately comes with affordable housing. But the realities are real. And the issue is ever present, especially in our community. My task today was to tell a story about a project we did Belmont in the town of Amherst, the Alberta Place project. It's been branded as. This is a site that's located in the town of Amherst, just about at the intersection of Amsterdam and Alberta Drive. Proximate to the Boulevard Mall, a lot of shopping and commercial opportunities there. This was a 46-unit senior designated affordable housing project. The real estate came to us by way of what was really a cold call to a local developer, Benchmark Group. Benchmark has a management team. They own and operate both market rate and affordable housing, and they also have a construction division. Frankly, when I first called them, they weren't terribly excited at the idea. They had some designs around market rate housing, but I've got to give those guys a lot of credit. I worked them over. I was pretty persuasive and convincing for a long time. And it took me about 3 months or so, but they started to warm up to the idea, and we were able to kind of bridge a partnership to move this project forward. But really interesting site. The question is what attracts you to sites relative to affordable housing. I think it's immediate access to commercial services. This site has a Wegmans, the Boulevard Mall. It's not very far away at all from a super Walmart center. There's a host of commercial and medical office spaces in close proximity. There's also 2 NFTA transit routes that go right down Alberta Drive. That's critical usually to our context in thinking of these sites. And of course, the NFTA has long-term designs and plans around extending light rail down Niagara Falls Boulevard. That's a future endeavor that remains to be seen, but that was another interesting angle. I believe when it was all said and done, it was about a 1.5 acre site or so. And so we were really excited to get it under contract. And then I started to do a little bit more homework, and I learned that it was zoned general business. Well, first I should talk to sort of the context of the property too and surrounding zoning. The other thing that sort of attracted us to it is we thought it was sort of non-compatible to single-family residential neighborhoods and uses, and I think that's important because sometimes you get some pushback from folks in those neighborhoods. So we were sensitive to that. We had a pretty dense pattern of multifamily directly zoning and land use directly south of the site, and then again, really high density commercial zoning north and west of the site. So I learned it was zoned general business, and in that particular zoning classification in the town of Amherst, I think you can only have first floor commercial and then residential above. We didn't have designs around the commercial component with this project, so that was a bit of a challenge. And we dug a little deeper in terms of what would be required to pull off this particular project at this site. And what I've learned was we would probably end up needing about 8 variances. So I went and saw my boss, the president of Belmont, and I said, I got this site. Real estate's a little pricey. We're going to need 8 variances to pull this off. We're going to have to go through a rezoning. He sort of said to me, why are you doing this? And I said, I've had really good conversations with the town. It's in a great market area. I think it's an excellent spot for affordable housing. So I got to say, I got to give a lot of credit to Lori Stillwell and Supervisor Kulfa with the town of Amherst. They really were of great value to our team to sort of navigate, you know, the entire process and everything we would need to sort of make this project work on that site. And I've got to say, I was, you know, impressed and in some ways surprised. Actually, the community was very welcoming. We had a very good public engagement process. We did not have very many complications at public hearings and throughout the permitting process. Throughout, it was actually a great development experience, probably one of the better of my career, to be totally honest. And another thing that was unique about this site, there was a portion of public right-of-way that had been developed by the prior user. This is going back decades. It was a fire hall. And that was sort of a unique wrinkle in that there was no way to have title to that property. It was part of the site was developed literally in the right-of-way. So we worked with the town to abandon a portion of right-of-way. So beyond the number of variances, a rezoning, we also had to do a right-of-way abandonment. So it was an interesting project from a permitting perspective. But I'd like to think that the end product was worth it. We brought 46 units of affordable housing to the town of Amherst, right next to a well-amenitized and commercialized area, along 2 NFTA bus routes. You get a sense of the mix of rent and tenant AMI mix that we did was 50 and 60% at that particular project. And I think the other thing to stress about affordable housing projects in today's market relative to the requirements of the state and other funding sources, these are really nice projects. They definitely rival any market rate product that's built out there. I could take you through a number of recent projects. You can't discern in terms of level of finish and quality whether it's market or affordable. Those days are certainly done. This just gives you a sense of the overall cost of this project and sources. This was a fairly straightforward project. This was done through the 9% low-income housing tax credit funding opportunity through New York State Homes and Community Renewal. Also critical to our ability to complete this project was the town of Amherst, who provided $300,000 in construction and permanent financing through home funding, a federal funding source. These projects, unfortunately, aren't inexpensive. I think at the end of the day, we performed this for right around $275,000 a unit, which actually, in today's construction dollars, just over the past 2 years here, that's a bargain to deliver this work now. But it requires coordination of all levels of government. None of this gets done without good partners, and it's folks like this who are in the room today that make these projects possible. So. This is not a singular effort. This didn't happen because of Belmont. This happened because of a willing political climate in the town of Amherst. The residents in that community supported this effort, partners at the state, and certainly equity partners like KeyBank and others that stepped up and made this project a reality. So I was told that I should leave some time for questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes, we have a little bit of time for questions. Yes, please.
Do you have a wait list?
We do. Actually, I'm glad you asked. On average, our projects generally have about a 50-person wait list. I just looked into this yesterday because I was curious coming to this conversation. There's 138 people on the wait list for this project, which is, I think, says a lot. And I'd be remiss not to mention folks like Yvonne McCrae, who's here as well today, and you're going to hear from her very shortly. I was asked to talk about what are sort of the barriers to the development process. And I think having, you know, to the extent that you're a community that has access to resources, having a sophisticated infrastructure for managing those resources and sort of the RFP process, you don't always win as a developer, but the fact that there's an infrastructure in place to do that in a real objective way, that's important. Folks like Yvonne McCrae in the city of Buffalo know how to do that. Lori Stillwell knows how to do that. I think that's important. I think as a community, you have to put into place a plan, and it has to be mindful of the context of the folks who live in your community and what you're trying to accomplish as a community. And you also have to recognize the problem. It's real, and you have to have the political willpower to do something about that problem. And those are challenging issues. I worked for a time in my career for the town of Clarence in the Office of Planning and Zoning. I was assistant director of zoning there, and I get it. I understand the challenges on both sides of this equation, but I think that political willpower is very important.
One of the questions that came out of the rural group of folks that talked in a breakout was the impacts of poor management once these units are in operation and the developer or whoever's operating the units doing a poor job or not maintaining the impacts, not only the people residing there, but the perception in the community. We don't want more of that. So can you speak to the importance of maintenance and support during operations?
I can say it's difficult. You know, you're in a situation where you're dealing with tight margins and frankly low rental income, which is a difficult dynamic, and you're trying to deliver excellent service. Belmont, we own and manage our whole portfolio, and there's a reason why we direct manage our properties, because it's important. It's the legacy of your organization, and it's the permanent impression you leave. The day you build the thing is a great day, but it's the 50th year after you've run it that counts. So you have to build an infrastructure for that. And I agree with you. It's a challenging circumstance. You know, certainly the state and HUD and other resources are available there to provide some subsidy in terms of rental assistance contracts and vouchers to the extent you get a project that's really struggling. You might be able to secure some project-based vouchers to sort of bring in more rental income. But it's always a challenge, unfortunately. And especially when you deal with this region and you look at the rent margins we're dealing with. As Jason said, just as much as we have an affordable housing problem, we have an income problem here, and income relates to rent, and it makes it very difficult for everyone involved.
Brad, one more question.
Yeah, okay, one more, sorry.
Yes, sir. This is a reuse project, so did you get an IDA or any kind of assistance?
Well, I got to give a lot of credit to Erie County and their leadership. We're very fortunate as a developer in Erie County where they have a qualified housing pilot program. So it's adjusted to area median incomes, but you get incentivized as a function of total revenue. And so you don't have to go through an IDA route. Of course, all taxable jurisdictions in that project site, to include the school district and the town and/or the village, have to agree to participate in that structure as well. But back to the question about margin and the operating, margins we deal with, it's critical to make these projects work from a long-term operating perspective. And we were fortunate in that we were able to secure a qualified housing pilot, working with the county and the leadership of the town very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Brad. I definitely took some additional notes on how Erie County can help. For some of the smaller communities, we can help manage that RFP process. For some of the smaller communities, we can help make recommendations on the types of zoning changes that might be necessary. Those are ways, so if you're not dealing with the town of Amherst, but you're from a smaller community and you need to lean on the Department of Environment and Planning, we can help with that. Our next presenter is Yvonne McCrae. Yvonne has been serving as the Director of Housing for the City of Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency Bureau since 2009, and she works closely with the Mayor's Office of Strategic Planning. She's proud to lead the Division of Housing, which assists multifamily, nonprofit, faith-based, community or for-profit affordable housing developers to create or preserve units for households at or below 80% of the area median income. She is an alumni of Build Academy, Lafayette High School, and the University of Notre Dame. Please join me in welcoming Yvonne McCrae.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to adjust this microphone. It is my pleasure and honor to be here today. Thank you, Paul. Please thank the county executive, and thank you, Supervisor Dixon, for having us. I was asked to talk about supportive housing that we've created in the city of Buffalo with some of our partners. And I just want to say that, like many of the speakers here, I have a passion for this work. As a proud Buffalonian, I am very, very fortunate to work with super wonderful people from top to bottom. Our community organizations, our neighborhood groups, even our political officials, folks have taken a shine to affordable housing. They tell our story for us, our residents tell our story, but we do all of this together. So today I'm going to just feature 4 projects that we've done, and I have to apologize to Jocelyn Boss and to Brad Packer, because I did not select the people in Belmont projects had I known that they were going to be presenting as well. I would have. But we're going to give a little shine to some other folks that do this work. I have to say that supportive housing in the city, as Brad said, you can't tell from the outside or the inside that it's different in that it has a community built inside. Many of our providers lean on others, partners, to bring services in, but some of them deliver those services themselves. We require high quality, affordable housing from the beginning of the project all the way through the end. We also have serious and strict requirements for participation of MWBEs, service disabled veterans, and the city has a living wage. So many of our, and of course with our funding sources we have to use Section 3 and all these other requirements, but many of our developers far exceed what our expectations are in any of those areas. One of the questions that Brad just fielded was about the perception of affordable housing after it's completed, the operation, the maintenance. What I'll say is that the City of Buffalo, we require that our partners are accountable. It's totally fine for you to build something and hire another company to manage it, but what I remind the developers, the vice presidents and their board leadership, is when you walked into City Hall and asked for this funding, you didn't say, after we get the keys, we're gonna leave you on your own. Well, because if you had said that, we would have had a different conversation. We're in a relationship for 20 to 40 years, sometimes 50. So we come out and we monitor. We knock on the door of our inspections department, we make an appointment to go out, and we look at the maintenance, we look at the financial pro forma, we look at what shouldn't be garbage in the basement hallway, and we ask for it to be corrected. We also have a 311 call and resolution center that kind of serves as the last ditch effort to tell on somebody, right? We have had great success in communicating with our owners, holding them accountable and reminding them of the relationship. It's not just handing off funding. You're coming into our town, you're coming into our village, you're coming into our community, and you're offering a service, but what you will do is you will operate it with dignity and compassion through the relationship. We have a couple of things that we can do to make sure that happens. We usually don't have to get that far, but I just wanted to touch on that because when we talk about supportive housing, we are closely linked to our providers. So this is Riverside Apartments, DePaul Properties, a former school where they have created 57 units, well, just 68 units, 57 are one-bedroom units. We have a few two-bedroom units, but it's a full conversion of a former school. DePaul Property owns it, developed it, they manage it, and they operate it. The wonderful thing about this project is that community conversation started very early. The folks at DePaul actually created an alumni group with some neighborhood and community groups so that students who attended Riverside Academy could come in and talk about not only their memories of the neighborhood, but their memories of the school and what they desired to see in the future for their community. Some folks didn't live still in Riverside, some did, but they were a part of the conversation. It quelled down some of the angst that folks had surrounding affordable housing and certainly surrounding the supportive housing. So the DePaul alumni group, the neighborhood community organizations, they talked to DePaul, let them know what they wanted, and DePaul integrated it into the project. So what you'll see here is a project that should have won an award. Anybody wants to give out an award to it? They really did a phenomenal job. The building was vacant for 10 years, and I'll tell you that the basement was filled with water. DePaul said we really want it, and the Division of Real Estate said we really want to sell it to you. And the testing that was needed, I think it was $35,000. DePaul said we're going to pump the water out, we're going to do the testing, and we'll take it from there. You have to work together with folks. Some of the obstacles perhaps could be the physical plant, something that you never thought you could convert. But with good conversations, good folks on the development team, good ideas, innovation, you're able to work together to create something as beautiful as this. This was a $20.4 million project. The City of Buffalo and Bureau provided $1.5 million in home funding, federal home funds. There are 68 total units. DePaul spread the wealth for our funding around all of those units. Sometimes for municipalities, for the county, it may be easier to park your funds on the minimum number of units to get you there. Then there are other times when you want the whole kit and caboodle. And so with DePaul, in putting funding from the home program and all of those units, they triggered some other federal requirements that sometimes are a deterrent, but it's the reality. Davis-Bacon should not stop us from creating opportunities for clean, safe, decent, affordable housing everywhere. So DePaul took on that challenge. We completed this project in 2014. Each unit is a fully equipped kitchen, range, refrigerator, microwave, wall-mounted TV. DePaul they went further than most because they had more resources to do that. Heat, air conditioning, hot water, access to off-street parking, Wi-Fi, smoke-free facility. I could go on and on and on. It's gorgeous. If anyone has a desire to see any of these projects, you can reach me on the contact list. We'll connect you with the owner operator and we'll get you a tour. They're real. Real people live there. Real people built it. Real people support it. This is the old auditorium. Isn't it gorgeous? It's a community space where residents can come in, have a seat, they can do their, whatever they do on their device. They can eat, they can commune. The community can use it as well. As I said, we should have won an award. This is the entryway. So again, it's all about how we put these things together. It's the same funding. We're serving the same kinds of residents, those who are at or below 80%, those who fit into a particular category, and we're creating beautiful, long-lasting assets in the community. I am not just saying this because this is my job. I walked into this building when it was finished and I burst into tears. Thomas and I used to work together. I'm a very emotional person. I'm not gonna cry right now. But I just felt moved by the fact that students used to come to school there and now people will live there safely with the supports they need. It's amazing, in a community that welcomed them in. So some of the things that I wanted to make sure to feature on this slide. Many of our old buildings have their own challenges and obstacles. With innovative materials, as is required by HCR, some things you can't change, but what you can do is you can make it useful. So these barriers that keep folks from, and think about it, we went to school in these buildings. We could have fallen over. They won't let us let that happen now. So instead of blocking it, use glass. It creates an opening for the natural light. It's absolutely gorgeous to look at, and I'll tell you, it's always clean. Every time I've been there, it's been clean and maintained. So that is the DePaul project. Absolutely gorgeous. That's an apartment there. So the next project, and I'll go a little bit faster. The next project.
Just feature one more project.
One more?
So we have a little bit of time for
Okay.
questions.
So this is the West New York Veterans Housing Coalition, another school conversion, with the school conversion, same as DePaul, very, very thoughtful, but they also did adjacent infill on formerly city-owned vacant lots. We talk about the types of housing that are needed, multifamily, conversions, yes, but we also need separate site, single family, large units. These are meant for families who need 4 and 5 bedrooms. Some of them are smaller, some of them are larger, but West New York Veterans Housing Coalition looked at what was needed and they created this wonderful, wonderful opportunity adjacent to the school. $21.7 million project, $525,000 in home funds, 84 total units, 10 are home. It will be absolutely complete and rented up by the end of this year. Energy efficient, 40 reserved for seniors with a history of mental illness so they can age in place, and then services such as case management, benefits advocacy, financial management, skills training, all of that available to them. So I know that I can't feature the others, but we do have several other examples of how affordable housing can not only fit into the fabric of the neighborhood's existing architecture, but how we can complement that by creating opportunities on underutilized parcels of land that may be owned by, in the city's case, we have 7,000 or so vacant lots, but you may have some opportunities like with the project Brad featured, where you can create this beautiful, beautiful work with what you have. So I will Maria, you want me to open
Yes,
it up for
3
questions?
questions.
3 questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have an example of vacant lots that you wanted to use, but the owner wouldn't sell?
So unfortunately, we don't have that issue because we're the largest owner of vacant land in our town. But we have had owners who were opposed. They were absolutely opposed to us building or us going in because they were speculating as to what wonderful thing was going to come, and we let them know we're here. We are the wonderful thing that's coming. Brad Packard and the wonderful folks at Belmont have joined with us in the Maston Park area. Unfortunately, in the shadow of the 1275 Jefferson Avenue location, even before this, Brad's company worked on infill, acquisition, rehab, resale, and he's working on a plan right now to put some more units there. We asked for a small project. Brad's application came in. I said, we want 5, just 5 right now. It came in with 55. Aspirational, think big, but doable. But doable. 2 questions left. Yes, sir.
Was there an issue with the rezoning of that?
I believe for the 2 projects that we saw, there may have been a couple of variances because we have a green code. It's called our Unified Development Ordinance, which has been updated for the first time in 50 years. It's absolutely fabulous. But it does allow for variances because there are some setback issues, and generally there's some parking issues that we have that go on. So there weren't as many as Brad and the folks at Belmont had to face in Amherst, but we have had projects that needed variances in order to go forward. Last question. Who's got it? Yes, sir.
We're doing a project at the Walden Galleria Mall with 350 units. It's market rate, but we're trying to get a component for some subsidy or affordable units within it. The developer's very interested in that, but is there any challenges at the funding of both of those being within the same building?
No, sir. The dollar is as green as the other. It's the commitment. So if they want to do it, find a way, right? If you need help with how to situate it, the folks at People Inc. have partnered with, I believe their builder, Jocelyn left, she had an appointment. They partnered with someone for the Elmwood Crossing project, which is the old Children's Hospital, Women's and Children's Hospital, and I believe it's Sinatra. And they committed to voluntarily to make a portion of it affordable. Now I said, how big is that portion? But I believe it's 1/3 of the total number of units. They're not getting subsidy. There may have been some commitment or thought about subsidy, but they're going ahead. They don't count the People Inc. units that we're doing at the old maternity building, but they know the importance of mixed income communities. And if you all can find a way, I encourage you to definitely do it. We have some folks, some experts better than I who can talk about it from the city, but I'd be happy to connect you with them.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, and thank you for your question. I'll just add, Lenny Skrill said, you got an idea, we got a way to fund it. And that's the combination of funding that we know we can put together. Erie County can use some of our money for the most affordable units, and then we can use different pockets of state money for different levels of affordability, combine it with market rate, and combine it with commercial space. Those are all things that can be done in the creative problem solving that I know we are all here to do. So we've got one last presenter, and I'll also ask her to take 3 questions as well. Susan Jennings is the general counsel at Conifer Realty, which is based in Rochester. She is a Buffalo native and a University at Buffalo School of Law graduate. She has been at Conifer Realty for over 20 years, during which time Conifer has grown from a company with 40 employees to a company with over 500 employees and more than 200 affordable apartment units in 4 different states. So please join me in welcoming Susan Jennings.
Thank you for having me. This is a great program, lots of really great information. I live in Monroe County, but my heart is really in Erie County. I grew up in Lancaster, and my dad still lives there, and I've got siblings and cousins scattered throughout Erie County, and I'm thrilled to come back here, which I do all the time, and see all the improvements that are being made in the Buffalo area. I grew up here in the 70s and 80s, and just looking at it now, this is a really great community, and I'm really thankful that you're all focusing on such an important issue as affordable housing. So let me tell you a little bit about Conifer. Whoops. Already lost the first slide. So Conifer Realty, we have what we call a 360-degree model, which I think addresses your issue about maintenance. We own, we develop, we manage, we construct. We do that, all of that with our properties. We do everything in-house. All we do is affordable housing. So our reputation is really important. For us to get financing from the state, from communities, we need to maintain our properties. We are doing this for long term. We don't just develop and flip the properties and get rid of them. So we're in it for the long term. We're based in Rochester, but we have about 200 properties in 4 states. We're growing, heading south. We're one of the biggest owners and developers of affordable housing in the country. We're a for-profit, privately owned company. I'm going to talk to you today about Erie Harbor, which is a property that we developed 10 years ago now in the city of Rochester. This is a property that is what I would call a preservation deal. So some of you today talked about your communities being built out where you don't have room for new construction. So for this particular property, we did not create new affordable housing units. In fact, we decreased the number of affordable housing units. But what we did is we preserved existing housing. So we preserved an existing housing resource for the community. We improved it, and we're making sure that it's available for the long term. So this is the original property. This is was called Genesee Gateway. It's a property that was built in the 1970s along the Genesee River, just south of the downtown Rochester area. It's really ugly, huh? The high rise to the very left and the low rise is the barrack style housing along the water. It's 404 units of affordable housing, all of it affordable. It was all heated with electric heat. So it never had any income to do any improvements or to do any maintenance because it was just an inefficient building. It was a high crime area. It honestly was the blight of the neighborhood. It's awful. This was what it looked like. So we came in 2004, we bought the property, and this is what it looks like today. These pictures are current, even though the property was developed in 2012, so I just want to let you know that this is what it looks like today, 10 years after rehab. So you can see the property's right outside of downtown, right on the water. The blue and yellow high-rise is 100% affordable, and the low-rises, which you're just seeing in the foreground, are what we call an 80-20 deal. So you had asked about combining market rate and affordable. The 80-20 deal is 80% market rate, 20% affordable units, and that's what we ended up with. So these are what I'm going to talk about, Erie Harbor. The high rise in the prior picture, the high rise we call the Hamilton. What we did is we bifurcated ownership of the property. So instead of taking a 404 unit property and rehabbing it, what we did is we divided into 2 ownership structures. The Hamilton, the high rise, is 202 units that's 100% affordable. We joint ventured with the Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired. They have offices around the block. And ABVI is a partner of ours. They provide referrals to residents, and as part of the rehab, we added amenities for people who are visually impaired so that they could live at the property. So we're helping their clients. That property, the high rise, now has 100% rental assistance from the federal government, and that's 100% affordable. What I'm going to talk about is Erie Harbor, which is the remaining units. These were also 202 units that were 100% affordable, that old barrack style housing. We demolished those. This happened to be a brownfield, so we cleaned it up and we rebuilt 131 units. So we took it from 202 and we decreased the density down to 131 units. And we did new construction because we did a capital needs assessment, and our professionals came back and said this building's not worth saving. In addition to that, the reason we ended up with this design was because we worked really closely with the city of Rochester and wanted to determine what their needs were for the site. They did not want that dense population of low-income families at that site. The city was developing other affordable housing within the city, and they wanted to make this more of a mixed income neighborhood. They wanted to improve this whole neighborhood along the water here, which is called the South Wedge neighborhood. And they wanted to open up accessibility to the river. There's a bike path right along the river, and that old barrack-style housing just was a huge barrier. Nobody ever used that. So we worked with them and decided we would demolish and we would build fewer units in smaller buildings. We also, this is the low rises that are there now. There's 4 buildings, and then there's a mid-rise, which is a larger building, which is all apartments. This is townhouses over flats. The bird in the foreground is the easement area that we gave to the city of Rochester, which allows walking access to the river, and it's open to the public. Whoops, sorry, going too fast. That's the easement right there. So the public can access the water, they can get to the bike path easily. The city of Rochester funded the landscaping and then some artwork that they put in that area. That's the mid-rise building. Those are all apartments. Mid-rise. This is the inside of one of the townhouses. I'm featuring that just because the windows are just gorgeous in this building.
Were the townhouses for ownership purposes? Were you
Nope.
rental?
A lot of people think of townhouses, they think condos, but no, these are all rental apartments. We have a exercise room. We do this with all of our properties, an amenity for the residents. We have a rooftop deck. I understand the fireworks are great from there. Community room. We also have community rooms in all of our properties. So how do we fund this? This is, again, 2012 dollars. As Brad said, costs have gone up significantly, but for those 131 units, the total development cost of new construction was over $34 million. We got financing from New York State. Lenny Skrill was instrumental in this. The New York State Housing Finance Agency provided tax-exempt bond financing. The total construction loan was $18 million, and when we got done with construction, we paid it down to $14 million. By getting the tax-exempt bonds, that allowed us to participate in the low-income housing tax credit program. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. New York State also provided us with an HFA subsidy loan. City of Rochester provided a federal home loan. Conifer, my company, we put in $2.4 million as a loan. We will get that paid back with interest, so we will recoup that money eventually. Again, we're in this for the long term, so we're expecting to make our own contribution to our properties. We got a NYSERDA grant to do energy improvements. We put in their income from operations because as we finished each building, we started renting them up as we went, even though we still had some buildings under construction, so we had income that would help us finance the final construction costs. And we raised tax credit equity of $6 million. I'll tell you more about that. Lastly, our deferred development fee. So we, Conifer, the way we make money is through our development fee. We earned a $4 million fee. We don't get it paid when we build the building. Brad probably just seen this issue. We're getting it paid over 15 years. And right now, there's still about $2.5 million outstanding that we have not been paid, but we'll get it paid through cash flow from operations. And again, I added that as a part of our sources of funds because that's money that's on the table and that we did not take out of the deal. We left it on the table in order to finance the construction. The items that are highlighted in yellow, those are all private sources of financing for this deal. And I wanted to show you that because the low-income housing tax credit program is the most successful program in the history of affordable housing, and that's true across the country. What it does is it brings in private money to leverage the public money. And it's really great to have that because the equity that we brought in, that $6 million, M&T Bank is our partner there. M&T Bank contributed $6 million to our property in exchange for federal low-income housing tax credits. And that money doesn't get paid back. That's equity that they're putting in the deal, and it's money that the towns and counties and state did not have to bring to the table. So for that $6 million equity, what M&T Bank gets is $2.3 million in federal tax credits that are paid out over 10 years. And M&T paid us 92 cents on the dollar for each tax credit that they got. Also, I mentioned this is a brownfield site. New York State has a wonderful brownfield program. Someone, I think from Tonawanda, was mentioning that you've got a site that's very heavily industrial. We look for brownfield sites because that's a way to generate tax credits to bring equity into our properties. So we like brownfield sites. Here we did over $500,000 of remediation, clean up the soil on this property. And as a result, we were able to raise the brownfield tax credits of $5.8 million, and M&T Bank paid us 65 cents on the dollar for each tax credit they got under the brownfield program. So don't be deterred by a dirty site, because a lot of that can be taken care of. So you're not only getting housing, but you're getting cleaner property within your towns. And in exchange for the tax credits we're getting from the federal and state government, we're agreeing that we're going to keep this property affordable. The 27 units will be affordable for 30 years. So that's our part of the bargain. And when we talk about affordable, what we mean is that 27 units will be rented to families whose incomes are no more than 50% of area median income. So we're hitting some pretty low income families. And that their rents will be capped at 30% of 50% of area median income for those 30 years. Okay. So these residents aren't getting any rental subsidy in the Erie Harbor portion of the property unless they're bringing their own tenant-based vouchers, but they're getting the benefit of some really low rents. And that's a cap on the rent. So the rents may be lower than that, but that's the most that the state will allow us to rent for. In addition, we also had a County of Monroe IDA pilot agreement. Brianne mentioned the pilot agreements too. These are really important. You know, we're capping rents, so we have very little cash flow coming into the property. And as you guys all know, New York State has very high real estate taxes. So we really need to have a cap on our taxes so that we can afford to pay taxes. And what the IDAs in New York State are allowed to do is to provide pilot agreements as long as we agree to provide new employment opportunities. So if we commit to providing employment at the site, which we do because we're hiring property management folks to manage the property, they'll provide us with the pilot. And here what our pilot term was for 20 years. We could go out to 40 in New York State, but here they agreed to 20 years. We would have no increases in assessments for the first 10 years. And then after that, the exemption would decrease over the next 10 years at a percentage rate. And so, as you can see, there are a lot of different partners involved in developing this property, public and private. And 10 years later, we've got a really great property.
We probably have time for just one question here.
Just let me tell you, Conifer owns a property in Hamburg. We're also working on a property right now in Niagara County. We'd love to do more in Erie County, and some of us on our team are from Buffalo in addition to me, so we'd love to talk to you further about opportunities. Just great information today, and there's lots that you can do in your communities.
Thanks so much.
Awesome, Susan. Thank you so much. I am learning so much here, and I think what we have tried to accomplish in hearing from our developers is a sense of what's possible in your community, what's possible right here in Erie County. The other thing that we have learned from our developers is how important the partnerships are. So we've got municipal level government, we've got county government, we've got state government, all bringing resources on the table to partner with our private sector friends so that we can all serve our shared constituents, right? These are all of our shared constituents. So what's possible and how the partnerships are making it happen. So to close out our session today, we've just got a few brief comments from two of our friends, Lori Stillwell in the town of Amherst, and then from Paul D'Orlando. Lori's going to go first. She's the Director of Community Development for the town of Amherst. The town of Amherst is the lead HUD grantee, along with the towns of Tonawanda and Cheektowaga, to receive HUD home funds. Please join me in welcoming Lori.
So I was asked a little bit to talk about the home art funding that a lot of our communities are going to be getting. Before I talk about that, though, I want to thank the people who have helped the town of Amherst in the last several years get into the affordable housing game a little bit better. So when I found out that we had, you know, an amenable town board, I think my first call was to Yvonne, and then my second call was to Paul, and I was like, how do I do this? We don't have a program, we don't use our HUD funds that way. Help. And they helped tremendously. They shared materials, they guided me through the whole process. Brad was really helpful on teaching me the financing side. So I just want to say for other municipalities out there, if you're new to this, reach out to your other municipalities, see who's gone before, they will help you. They have a lot of materials, so thank you. So I was asked to talk about some of the home ARP funding, so the HUD home funds that have been mentioned in some of the development projects. There was a special appropriation that was awarded through the American Rescue Plan Act, and it operates a little bit differently than how home funds traditionally work with our entitlement communities. And so it has a very special qualifying population. So we can still do the affordable housing incentives related to 80% and under area median income for development projects, but in this case, for the ARP funds, you have to focus on homeless populations or populations at risk of homelessness. So as part of the development of these funds, you know, the entitlement communities that are receiving them are required to do certain types of planning in order to establish their programming. And so the town of Amherst, with our consortium with Tonawanda and Cheektowaga, we're receiving $3.4 million through this special appropriation. I think the county has a similar amount. Yvonne, you have a lot more. And we're all kind of in the same game right now. We're planning for how we're going to use these funds in the programming. And so what our consortium, it's still draft, but what our consortium is really looking at right now is a continuation of that home rental subsidy that we had put into the Alberta Place project, and we're putting in soon to be the Bloker project for People Inc. in Williamsville. So we'll be having a special allocation for how that program traditionally works. It's an incentive based on the per unit, but in this case you have to hold aside the units for those qualifying populations. So we're going to run that program we usually run, but we'll have a special additional allocation according to that. Now, one of the other areas we're looking at for programming is kind of small sites. You know, the town of Amherst, we have difficulty finding buildable lots. We're kind of built out, but we are interested in building up some of our neighborhoods into more higher density, walkable communities. And you can't always do that with a 50-unit complex. So we're looking at creating a pocket of that funds that will address kind of small complexes, 8, 10 units and under. And we're hoping to kind of couple it with some of the HCR funding for those smaller projects. But we're going to make that program more flexible. So we're going to have a very long lead time for the development of those. We're going to package it with capacity building for nonprofits and a lot of supportive services. So the transportation, the childcare, any other services that are needed in order to make those small scattered sites that will infill our neighborhoods successful. And then the last category we're really looking at are these standalone supportive services. So what we're hearing from our homeless community across the board is that, you know, a lot of populations that are in the transition phase of affordable housing, they've gotten out of their homeless situation, they're in transitional housing and they need to move to permanent housing. A lot of times when they make that change or they kind of time out in the supportive services they need to make them successful in their permanent housing situation. So we're looking to have a program area with the Home ARP funds that will pay for a longer term incentive for those supportive services. So like, again, the childcare, transportation, case management, and all of that. So it's draft. I'm sorry I don't have slides on it. We haven't really published anything yet, but we will be going around and holding a public hearing on how those funds are proposed to be used and taking public input on it. And that's just for our consortium. I know the city of Buffalo will have their own programming set up, as will Erie County. But if you have any questions on those funds, I'm sure you can reach out to who your entitlement community is.
Thank you so much, Lori. And then to talk about our Erie County Consortium area is Paul DiOrlando. Thank you so much, Paul.
Okay, so I'm not going to reinvent too much of what Lori said, but I did want to talk about our money. We actually, for our 34 municipalities in the Erie County Consortium, we're also getting $3.4 million, the exact same as those 3 large towns are receiving. So we're in the process of winding down our, getting into a draft document that we need to send to HUD. And what we're looking at is a couple of different options for our funding, which will entail notice of funding availabilities that we're hoping to issue sometime in the next 2 to 3 months if we get approval from HUD. One of them will be a small portion of the money, and it's for capacity building for nonprofit organizations. So that will be something to think about to sort of get into the game of affordable housing. We can assist with staff in those organizations to be trained, and also to hire consultants to help them and guide them through the process. And the bulk of the money will go for rental housing, construction of rental housing, which is where you see some of these developers, the development projects that are occurring, will be able to piggyback to use a small portion of the home ARP money to much larger projects. So out of that $3 million, we're hoping to fund as many projects as we can. That's one of the reasons why we're here today, to try to link in some of the municipalities with these developers. So those are the 2 main areas that we're looking at, and like I say, we're hoping to get these out within 2 to 3 months if we get HUD approval. A couple of housekeeping things that I did want to mention. You all should have received a contact list in your folder, so you should really keep that. And as Lenny said too, you can, on a municipal level, if you have questions, you can contact these developers directly. Like, Susan had said, that's why they're here, to have folks just kind of make cold calls and just call and say, hey, we have, a couple ideas, of areas or maybe parcels we're thinking about for affordable housing. We like what we saw. Maybe in some of the rural communities, it's, you have seniors who want to age in place. So that list is kind of critical, that contact list, but you can also contact me, directly on that, to help facilitate, that process. And they understand, the developers understand that, people on a municipal level, a lot of folks are coming into this sort of green to the process, and it's not uncommon for them, to have those conversations, say, yeah, we'll come out and we'll meet with you. They wouldn't be on that contact list if they didn't assume that was one of the things that would come out of of having this event. Another thing in that same sort of arena is in terms of dealing with this big, large issue of affordable housing and all the details of it, is one of the entities that I put on that contact list is the LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation. So there is a local component of this national organization. Maggie Hamilton Winship is actually here today. She's on the list, so that would be another good place to start, is to contact them, because they actually provide assistance directly to local folks who really haven't gotten involved in this process of affordable housing before. So that's the reason why, one of the real main reason why they're on the list. A couple other housekeeping things. In Jason Knight's talk here, he had mentioned his most recent report, which actually was commissioned through LISC. I actually have a number of those books. It's actually online, so we actually have it too on our department website, but if you want to see me after, if I have about 5 or 6 of those books, you can actually have it to chew on if you wanted to. My email, you all have, because I emailed you all, so a couple times, so to remind you a couple times about this. So you should contact me, if there's any questions you have on anything, or to help facilitate, a process. I think something that Maria is already thinking about, I can tell, is that, maybe, we're probably going to be wanting to get out into some of these communities more directly. So this was more broad, and as we think about that, we can help. Our department can help, hopefully, in facilitating that process. So I think that's all I had. Anyone here with planning board members who are receiving credit, we have sheets for you on the way out where you register. So just go there, and you'll get your sheet. And the very last thing I do want to say is a really special thank you to Gary Dixon. I contacted Gary on this a while back, and from the first email, you know, that I asked him about this, do you have a site? Where can we do it? What do you think? He was just really fantastic and very overly helpful, and he's made his staff available that way, and it was really great. It's a great location, and we're really thankful. I am personally.
So thank you so much to Paul. Thank you again to Supervisor Gary Dixon for hosting us. I'll just kind of close us out here, friends. We've talked about, it's been our objective to kind of share with you kind of a county-wide sense of the data of what's happening in the region, then to provide your specific community with what's happening locally, then to put on the table the funding that could be available to you and your community, and then to give you a sense of what's possible with some of the partnerships and developers who are here. And I'll just kind of close by saying all of us, we all care deeply about our communities, but we cannot do the economic development, the community development, the workforce development. We can't do any of that for our community if our residents do not have a stable place to lay their head at night. Everything stems from that stable place to lay your head at night, to breathe, to dream, to relax, to read to your children, to go back to school. All of that comes from having that stable place to put your head at night, to plan your retirement, you name it, it all comes from that sense of stability. So hopefully you found today's session useful in helping to get that and see what's possible in your community. I'll just ask, if you are a staff member of the Erie County Department of Environment and Planning, could you please stand? Yes, let's give those folks a round of applause. Please stay standing, friends. So not only are you standing because you deserve a round of applause for planning today's session, but you are standing also because you are here to help. So if you are in a community who is struggling and needs more information, the Erie County Department of Environment and Planning is here to serve you, friends. And Commissioner Dan Castle is here, our Deputy Commissioner is here. You can reach out to any of them, to Dan, to Thomas, to Paul, to Marie, to all of our staff here, and we are here to serve you. So thank you so much for coming, friends. We hope you enjoyed today's session, and we'll look forward to staying in touch.